The pledge?
Yeah, you want to still do it? That's great.
Yeah. Right.
That might be disastrous, actually, from a timing standpoint, because the lag.
I'll do it. All right, as soon as we get the high sign, we will get started. Good evening. Welcome to tonight's City Council meeting for the City of Xenia. Tonight is August 27th, 2020. At this time, I will call the meeting to order. We will have an invocation followed by a Pledge of Allegiance by Vice President Edgar Wallace. If you could all rise, please. We'll bow our heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to come together. Give us wisdom and guidance tonight as we make decisions for what's best for our citizens and for our city. Thank you for safe passage tonight, and continue to give those that leave the meeting tonight safe passage on their way home. Thank you for the liberties that we have in our country, for our freedom. Pray for those that are in leadership above City Council, our governor, our president, our Senate, and our Congress. Thank you for looking over us tonight, and we lift everything up to you. In your Son's name we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice President Wallace. At this time, could we get a roll call, please?
Vice President Wallace,
Here.
Councilman Scrivens,
Here.
Councilwoman Dean,
Here.
Councilman Branham,
Here.
Councilman Dean,
Here.
Mayor Mays,
Here.
President Smith.
Here. Thank you very much. For those that are watching tonight, Vice President Wallace is present. However, he is doing the meeting via Zoom, as well as looks like our law director. Thank you very much. I just wanted to clear that up. Our first item is the approval of minutes from our August 13th, 2020 meeting. Do I have anyone that would like to make the motion to accept the minutes, please?
So moved, Mr. President.
Thank you. Moved by the mayor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Scrivens. Any corrections or changes to the minutes before us? Seeing none, could I get a roll call, please?
Vice President Wallace,
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens,
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean,
Aye.
Councilman Branham,
Aye.
Councilman Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Mays,
Aye.
President Smith.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is special presentations. We actually have none special scheduled for tonight, so we'll move on to our next item, which is audience comments. At this point in our meeting, those that are in attendance are welcome to come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Limit your comments to 3 minutes, please. Thank you very much.
I'm Everett Rasnick. I live up on the corner of Lexington and 42. Mr. Scrivens is my neighbor. I'm here to complain about people speeding up and down Lexington Street all day long. And we got kids riding their bicycles, walk across the street. What can we do about it? I called the police, and I called them Monday, and they never showed up. I'm afraid one of the kids is going to get hurt.
Sure. Okay. Well, we will take your consideration tonight. We don't normally engage back and forth at the meetings. We actually leave that comments up to our officials, police chief or appointed officials. And can you reach out and get contact information, and we'll see what we can do on that.
Last one I told slow down, he got out of his car He cussed me out, told me he was going to kill me and everything else. This is crazy.
Yeah, that does sound crazy. So, if you could, always feel free to pick up the phone, call our city police, and reach out to dispatch. We'll see what we can do.
I called, my mom called them Monday, and I ain't heard from a police officer yet on this. To me, it's crazy.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Anyone else?
John Kelp, 936 Orville Way. One thing this city has a lot of, that's water. We have enough water in this city that we could supply this city twice, especially since we lost the county contract. So water has never been an issue in this city. We're going around now, we're replacing water meters with new meters. I'm one of the lucky ones, I got 2 meters in my yard. So both meters were replaced. So then I get this lovely letter from the council this week, the city, I consider it council because you approved it, where you're charging me $250 for the luxury of you not reading the sanitation on my irrigation meter. Now, I've already paid for that meter once. I paid for the original meter that went in. I didn't choose to change those meters out. You're not charging me for my regular water meter. So why are you going to charge me a second time for my irrigation meter? I mean, these meters are efficient for you, not me. I mean, they're easier to read. From what the guy that's replacing the meters told me, that they're much easier for the city to read and more efficient. So, you know, water's profitable. That's your enterprise funds. You guys make money off water. So now while you're making money off my water that I use, you're taking me off because I've got to pay a double taxation now for a second meter yet again. Mayor Saraga's talked about the rain tax years and years ago that went into place, where we started taxing people for water. Well, here we are again, taxing people again for water. And we have a majority Republican council, and I'm disappointed that obviously you voted for it. You must have approved it. Did anybody ask any questions why we would charge somebody with an irrigation meter the second time? I'm paying $250 according to this letter. I'd hate to see what you're probably charging a business for theirs. $500, $750. We're already one of the highest tax cities in the state. And yes, we are. I know that the city manager will dispute that with me, but I'll show them the numbers and dispute it back with them. But we are. We want people to move into this city. We want higher income individuals to move into this city. We want people to maintain their properties. But yet, somebody that's already paid for a meter, that's getting it replaced for water that you make money on, you arbitrarily change the rates whenever the council wishes to vote to change the rate. And it has increased ever since the county lost, or the city lost the county contract. They started increasing it a year before you lost the contract. So I'm gonna sit here tonight and I hope I hear a response back from 7 council members. Because the council members work for the taxpayers of this city. And you all sit there and you never say a word. So I hope at the end of the meeting, during council comments, you all can respond to me and let me know how you justify taxing the taxpayers yet again. It shouldn't have happened. Now, if you want to charge somebody $250 that's putting a new irrigation meter in, that's fine. But don't charge me a second time for the luxury of you not reading my sanitation, the water that's not going into the sewer system. Thank you very much. Oh, by the way, I get my water bill. Typically it's, I don't know, 160, 170, maybe 180. $313 this month. So not only are you charging me for my meter, everybody I've heard got a big old water bill this month. So, and I heard that supposedly, next month's supposed to scale back a little bit, but we'll see. We'll see. $313. How many residents in the city pay $313 a month? You make money off of me. You make money off me every month. But you're gonna charge me $250 to replace my meter that I didn't want replaced. It's for you, it's not for me. Why are you taxing me a second time for it? Thank you very much.
Anyone else care to come to the podium? Give us your name and address for the record. Okay, thank you. I'm sure our appointed officials will help answer some of your questions in their report.
I prefer to hear from our elected officials.
Well, we'll get to that later. All right, so our next item in our agenda is old business. Our first item is item A, ordinance 2020-20. This is a second reading. This is amending sections 1044.06, 1044.07, which is adopting chapter 1048. This is repealing in its entirety existing chapter 10048 of the City of Xenia Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code as contained in the codified ordinances. This was originally introduced by Vice President Wallace at our last meeting.
And I now move its passage.
Thank you. Move for passage. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by the mayor. Thank you very much. Any comments or questions regarding this amendment? Nope. All right. Can we get a roll call, please?
Vice President Wallace,
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens,
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean,
Aye.
Councilman Branham,
Aye.
Councilman Dean, Mayor Mays,
Aye.
President Smith.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Our next item is item B, Resolution 2020-V, also a second reading. This is providing for assessments to be levied and authorize the finance director to certify those assessments to the Greene County Auditor. This was introduced by Mayor Mays on August 13th at our last meeting.
Thank you, sir. Move for passage.
Thank you. Move for passage by the mayor. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilman Branham. Any discussion regarding this resolution? All right. Not seeing any discussion or comments, we'll go to a roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace,
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens,
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean,
Aye.
Councilman Branham,
Aye.
Councilman Dean, Mayor Mays,
Aye.
President Smith.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Our next item is Resolution 2020-W, also a second reading. This is authorizing the sale of city-owned property located at 135 East Church Street to the former Xenia LLC. And this was introduced by Councilwoman Dean at our last meeting on August 13th.
I'd like to move for passage.
Thank you
please.
very much. Move for passage by Councilwoman Dean. Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll second that, Mr.
Okay, I
President.
think the mayor just beat you. But
Okay.
thank you for that offer. Any discussion or questions regarding the second reading?
I think that this is a good opportunity for Xenia to get a new school system, a new option for education besides, our community schools and also legacy. So I think this is a good move. I was a part of the STEM school over on Woodman Drive through college with some student teaching. I enjoyed that school. It was a very nice site that used to be a former Value City. I think this will be a great addition to our community.
All right, thank you very much for that comment. Anyone else like to add on? Okay. Seeing none, can I get a roll call, please?
Vice President Wallace,
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens,
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean,
Aye.
Councilman Branham,
Aye.
Councilman Dean, Mayor Mays,
Aye.
President Smith.
I'll abstain. Thank you.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Our next item is Resolution 2020-X, also a second reading. This is supporting the Flexibility for States and Localities Act, item HR 7094, and urging the U.S. Congress to enact said legislation. This was introduced by Mayor Mays at our last meeting.
Thank you, sir. Move for passage.
Thank you very much. Move for passage by the mayor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Scrivens. Any discussion or comments regarding this? Yes, Councilman Scrivens?
I see we're asking the House of Representatives to do something. And from my knowledge, I think the House of Representatives passed the bill back in March, and it's been pigeonholed in the Senate since. So for whatever good this will do, I'm gonna vote for it. But our job at this point is to have the Senate to swing in action.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to chime in on this? Okay. No other discussion? All right, we're going to go ahead and move for a roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace,
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens,
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean,
Aye.
Councilman Branham,
Aye.
Councilman Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Mays,
Aye.
President Smith.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. We have no public hearing scheduled for tonight, so our next item is new business. First item is item A, an ordinance 2020-21 titled an emergency. This is amending ordinance 2020-18 to provide appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the city of Xenia for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Finance Director.
Thank you, Council President. We're requesting an additional appropriation this evening for a few reasons. The first is for the purchase of e-prosecutor case management software, and the law director has an item for you later in the meeting where she'll be requesting approval of that expenditure. Also requesting that we move, this isn't an additional appropriation, but simply moving money from personnel to operating and income tax. We weren't sure exactly when that RETA transition would occur, when the original budget was passed. So all of the dollars were budgeted in personnel. Obviously, we have discontinued that service as of the beginning of September from an income tax standpoint, so we don't have a need to have those dollars appropriated for personnel, but we will need to pay RETA, obviously, for the services they're providing, so we need to move it from personnel to operating. Our law enforcement fund, our police department, they've been blessed tremendously over the last couple of months by donations from businesses and people in the public to buy additional equipment, and because of that, they're able to purchase additional operating equipment that wasn't originally budgeted for, and so we're requesting tonight an appropriation so that those donations from the public can be spent down. We're requesting an appropriation of $10,000 in 361. The city manager's office has been very aggressive in trying to sell city property, get it back into private hands and put to good use. And along with that comes some fees for recording fees, different real estate fees, things like that that weren't originally included in the budget. And so we're requesting some dollars for that purpose, actually a couple of requests this evening to sell city property. And then finally, a loan in the 602 fund, $50,000 related to that sale of the YMCA. It would be a loan to the Y that would be potentially forgiven contingent on income tax revenue and job creation from the school. So we're requesting appropriations this evening for those purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Finance Director. Do you have anyone that would like to make the motion to amend this ordinance as an emergency?
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Scrivens as an emergency. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, seconded by Councilman Dean. Thank you, sir. All right, any comments or questions regarding this? Yes, Councilman Scrivens?
Mr. Finance Director, how long will the loan be out for the $50,000 to the Y? Is that gonna be self-amortizing or?
So it's a 5-year loan, I believe $10,000 due each year, and we would essentially evaluate each year the income tax dollars that have been received as a result of the new employment, and the loan would be forgiven in accordance with that if they meet certain standards for job creation.
Well, and Councilman Scrivens, if I may, one thing to remember is that we are loaning this $50,000 for them to purchase the property from us.
Right.
Meaning they are going to borrow the $50,000 and turn around and pay that right back to the city. That's part of the purchase price. So that money will directly come right back to the city. The payment then of that $50,000 is what the finance director was referring to, the generation of $10,000 at least in income taxes over the next 5 years. But the loan is to buy the property from us. So they will be lent the money and turn right around and pay that $50,000 right back to the city.
So it will never leave our coffers.
Well, it will. It'll go on a short little trip and come right back.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Scrivens. Anyone else have comments regarding this? Okay, we've had it moved and seconded. Can I get a roll call, please?
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Smith?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Our next item is ordinance 2020-22. This is an introduction. This is levying assessments for the improvement of city streets and public ways by the lighting thereof within lighting district number 4 for years 2021 to 2022. Mr. Merriman?
Thank you, sir. As positioned with prior council actions, ordinance 2020-22 is now the last step to implement street lighting assessments within street lighting district number 4 for the years 2021 through 2022. The resolution of necessity to establish street lighting district number 4 and the ordinance to proceed with the street lighting district have been approved by council. This is the third and final step in this assessment process. After the ordinance becomes effective, a street light assessment will be applied and included on the individual lot owner's property tax duplicates with the Greene County Auditor. Based on the city's current contract with Miami Valley Lighting, the owner of each of the 2 lots within the Greenway Subdivision Section 2 replat, which constitutes the street lighting district number 4, would pay an annual fee of $238.80. We're recommending a 2-year period on these assessments, as this would align the timing with all the districts for future renewals. Staff's recommending introduction of the ordinance tonight to get this complete.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Any comments regarding this? No. Anyone want to introduce this?
I'll introduce.
Introduced by Councilman Branham. Thank you very much. Our next item is ordinance 2020-23. This is also an introduction. This is levying assessments for the improvements of city streets and public ways for the lighting thereof of lighting district number 5 for years 2021 to 2022. Mr. City Manager, anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, so similar to that last agenda item, ordinance 23 represents action steps that council would take to implement the street lighting assessments within district number 5, again for this 2-year period. Council previously required the resolution of the necessity to establish the district. It's adopted the ordinance, and again, so we're completing these steps as required by policy. Again, with this one, we're trying to align these so that when we do our future renewals, that we can do them all in one action collectively. So similar to the last one, this is just a different district.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Anyone volunteer to introduce this?
I'll introduce it, sir.
Introduced by who?
Here.
Councilman Dean, thank you very much. Our next item is ordinance 2020-24. This is also an introduction. This is enacting Chapter 1061, titled Illicit Discharge and Illegal Connection Control of City of Xenia Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code, as contained in the codified ordinances. Mr. City Manager, could you explain?
Yes, sir, thank you. In July of this year, local jurisdictions were notified by the Ohio EPA that a draft general permit to discharge for stormwater was ready for review and public comment. Once enacted by the state of Ohio, each jurisdiction has up to 180 days to submit an application for the renewal of our existing permit and must submit updated stormwater management plan. The city of Xenia is subject to these requirements. We have to do it. In response, our engineering staff is currently in the process of soliciting proposals from qualified engineer firms to help update the stormwater management plan, and I think I sent some information about this to council a week or 2 ago. Key requirement of the Ohio EPA-approved stormwater management plan is that we have adopted an illicit discharge and illegal connection control ordinance. Illicit discharges are defined as any non-stormwater discharge that's put into a waterway or receiving stream. Chapter 1049 of Xenia's codified ordinances alludes to illicit discharges and the authority of the city to enforce those regulations. However, it's not specific as specific as what ORC would require. So with that, it's necessary to pursue addition of some more specific regulatory language in our code in order to be compliant with what's necessary for the permit. Our engineering staff has reviewed some similar ordinances of local jurisdictions, and we're recommending adoption of the proposed new Chapter 1064 as presented in your packets to meet EPA's minimum requirements in order for the city to get our renewal for our general permit to discharge. And so we are recommending introduction of this legislation this evening for future consideration.
All right, thank you, Mr. City Manager. Anyone else have any comments or questions regarding this introduction? And do we have a volunteer to introduce it? Introduced by Councilman Scrivens. Thank you very much. Any other comments on this? I know it's kind of hard to hear.
The city manager said chapter 1064 is actually chapter 1061.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. That is correct.
Well noted.
Forgot
All
my
right.
glasses, and so I'm struggling to read it.
All right. So our next item is Resolution 2020-Y. This is an introduction. This is authorizing the sale of .606 acres of city-owned property located at 450 Home Avenue, known as Home Avenue Park, to the Home Church. Mr. City Manager, could you tell us about that?
Thank you, sir. City Council has reinforced with staff the priority of divesting of unneeded and underutilized city-owned properties in order to relieve the city of the maintenance liabilities associated with that, as well as any other obligations, with the intent of returning property to private hands for productive use. In light of this, staff has recently been engaged by leadership from Home Church, which is located at 356 Home Avenue. They've discussed with the city the possibility of purchasing land abutting the church's property, known as Home Avenue Park. On August 4th, the church submitted a formal offer, which we've provided, to purchase the park, if you want to call it that, park property for $1,000. The church's intention is to continue to allow public access to the area, would like to reinvest in updated equipment at the park and continue to allow the land to be open to the community. Staff is very supportive of this approach to divest for several reasons. First, being that the park was identified in our Xenia strategic plan as being underutilized with outdated, deteriorating amenities. And it's in close proximity to Spring Hill Park, which much better serves the needs of that neighborhood community. Second, the park is really not large enough to support any significant redevelopment, and the entire park is in floodplain. There's a creek right there, so we're concerned about the safety aspect of that. Finally, the Xenia strategic plan's recommendation for the park was to divest to adjacent property owners or removing the equipment and allowing it to become green space. So we believe that taking this course of action is consistent with what was put into our strategic planning process. We think this is a good public-private partnership. The church really wants to engage that neighborhood, that community, and provide better services and support or enhance the stability of families in that community. So we just see this as a win-win opportunity, and staff is recommending this evening that you introduce Resolution 2020-Y to allow for the sale of this property.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Any comments or questions regarding this? And do I have a volunteer to introduce? Thank you. Introduced by Councilwoman Dean. Our next item is Resolution 2020-Z. This is also an introduction. This is authorizing the sale of 23.4373 acres of city-owned property located at Tremont Road and North Columbus Street to Isaac and Samantha Jack and Jacob and Cynthia Strail. I hope I didn't butcher those names. Mr. City Manager, could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, Resolution 2020-Z is another item aimed at divesting marketable city-owned but unused real estate, again with a higher use in mind. Staff is recommending this resolution for introduction this evening, again to facilitate the sale of 23.43 acres of wooded property. This is located off of Tremont Road on the Eastern Corporation limit of the city. It's adjacent to North Columbus and north of the Lexington Avenue area. Again, it's presently just a large wooded lot. The city acquired the property through a tax foreclosure in 2019 at a cost of $3,733.68 in court fees with a $68 recording fee. We've incurred some just minimal additional maintenance costs from the site over the past year or so that we've had the property. Council had previously authorized the marketing of this residentially zoned property, and staff had it listed through our local realtor, Joe Kennedy. Over the past year, we've received a couple different offers that were really, we didn't feel serious offers in terms of the appraised value. But we were contacted with an offer, and we have entertained a negotiation for the property. We've arrived at a tentative sale price of $175,000, again, from the aforementioned Isaac and Samantha Jack, and Jacob and Cynthia Streel, I'm not sure, I'm sorry on there too. We're told that the buyers intend to parcel out the property and utilize it for at least 2 residential homes at some point in the near future. Staff believes this is a fair offer, and that the intended use of the property is certainly in alignment with our comprehensive plan projections for the area. So we are recommending introduction this evening of Resolution 2020Z, which would authorize this sale.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have a volunteer to introduce this? Introduced by Councilman Scrivens. Any comments or questions regarding this? Yes, Councilman Scrivens?
The city manager and I did have a chance to go take a look at this property. And it's ripe for sale, and it's ripe for development of a housing project. 23 acres is a nice piece of land still inside the city. And I'm sure over the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see some significant development there. I just can't wait to see what's go revelate with this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Councilman Scrivens. Anyone else? No? Okay. So our next item is an administrative motion, item G. This is authorizing the city manager to execute an economic development loan agreement with former Xenia LLC. Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, sir. Item G tonight is related to council's prior actions from this evening, including Resolution 2020W for the sale of the vacant former YMCA facility located at 135 East Main Street. This would be to the former Xenia LLC, an entity that is intending to lease the building to a nonprofit tuition-free charter school to be known as Community STEAM Academy. The agreed-upon sale price of $52,500 for the site includes $2,500 in commission fees for Colliers International as the realtor of record. As indicated, the remaining $50,000 would be subject to an economic development loan agreement as presented with the agenda item this evening. This would be lent by the city to the former Xenia LLC, who would use the money for the purchase of the building. The economic development loan agreement requires former Xenia LLC to lease the facility to the STEAM Academy and to generate through the lessee at least $10,000 per year in income taxes annually for 5 years starting in calendar year 2021. If this amount of income taxes is not generated on an annual basis, the LLC was required to submit cash payments to the city to cover any shortfall. At the end of the 5-year period, the $50,000 loan would then have been satisfied. Staff believes this approach is a positive result of a collective public-private effort, and that the net benefit to the community is pretty clear. But among the specific items accomplished through this arrangement include ensuring that the revenue received exceeds the city's cost expended to date for the acquisition and maintenance of the former Y, so it will make us whole there, relieving the city of this ongoing maintenance liability, allowing the LLC and the Community STEAM Academy to obtain the financing that they need to undertake a pretty considerable building rehabilitation cost, which will then certainly expand the value of that property. And then establishing an institution that could enhance and complement Xenia's educational offerings while bringing visitors to our community downtown specifically, and certainly yielding sustained income tax revenue. So we're excited about all of those things. Staff is recommending this evening council vote to authorize this agreement through an administrative motion in conjunction with the prior approvals of Resolution 2020W and the appropriation. Doing so will allow us to divest of this and facilitate this new addition to our community.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Do we have any volunteers that would like to make the motion? This is going to authorize the city manager to execute this agreement.
Mr. President, I move the approval.
Okay, thank you. I also got an approval by the mayor. I think she beat it just briefly, so we'll move that as a first by the mayor and second by Vice President Wallace for the city clerks.
That works for me.
Okay. Any comments or questions regarding this loan agreement? Yes, Councilman Scrivens?
Mr. City Manager, does the agreement include the parking lot to the rear of the building?
Yeah, there are, this
City
site,
owns
if
that
you've-
lot also?
Yeah, if you've ever looked at the county GIS, it actually includes multiple parcels. And so this would include those parking lot parcels all as one site.
So are we currently generating income from those parcels?
No, we've had a general gentleman's agreement with Greene County. We've allowed some parking, some overflow parking for their staff. We have advised the county that contingent upon your approval, that there may have to be some accommodations made for that, so the county's aware of that. And we've invited them to entertain some conversation with the LLC to see if there's an arrangement. But otherwise, we would work with the county for parking, but we're not getting anything off of that today.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Does that answer suffice for you? I guess. Any other questions? All right. Seeing no other comments or questions, could I get a roll call, please?
Vice President Walls?
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Smith?
Thank you. I'll abstain.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Our next item is item H. This is an administrative motion. This is approving the recommendations of Greene County Tax Incentive Review Council as presented and directing the OEZ annual report to be forwarded to the Greene County Commissioners for their consideration. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. Ohio Revised Code requires that a Tax Incentive Review Council, or TIRC, be created and maintained to annually review all active Ohio enterprise zone and community reinvestment area agreements to determine whether or not the awarded companies are in compliance with the conditions and the terms of their respective agreements. Upon review, the TIRC is required to affirm compliance and make recommendation to City Council regarding continuation of the company's agreements. The recommendations of the TIRC and any action subsequently taken by Council must then be submitted to the local enterprise zone manager for Greene County and the Greene County Commissioners, who will review and forward the approved recommendations to the Ohio Department of Taxation and the Ohio Development Services Agency. At this time, the City of Xenia has one active OEZ agreement and one with CIL isotope separations and one active CRA agreement with Tashi Hospitality Incorporated. These agreements were reviewed by the TIRC at their annual meeting on August 7th of this year. The TIRC has affirmed staff's recommendations for each project based on the information submitted. The TIRC recommends continuation of the 70% abatement for applicable property tax for CIL, as well as continuation of a 90% abatement of applicable real property taxes for Tashi Hospitality. This evening, staff is requesting Council accept the TIRC's recommendations to continue the two agreements as outlined in the agenda report and to direct the OEZ annual report to be forwarded to the Greene County Commissioners for their consideration.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to accept these recommendations and continue these two agreements?
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Scrivens. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by the mayor. So I'm going to ask if, can these two items be voted on separately? Tashi and CIL, or do they need to be voted on together?
I believe it's just one report from the TIRC recommending that those two be approved. So I believe you could do it as one resolution, which we will then forward on to the county.
Are you guys good with that? Just do one. Okay. Any comments or questions regarding this?
I would just add, Mr. President, the CIL Isotopes is a little-known industrial treasure in our community. They do some world-class work, providing very rare materials for medical, for military application, and they've made some significant recent investments in their site and community and have plans for additional expansion in the future. So this is a great community. We often, hear folks say, well, there's no industry in Xenia, and it really couldn't be further from the truth. We have some very unique industrial residents like CIL, and we're very blessed to have them.
Thank you very much. Just for a point of record, who is appointed to sit on that
That's what I was-
TIRC?
Who are the members?
That would be, Steve and I both sit in on those TRIC
That's fine.
meetings, yeah.
Who
Who recommends the percentage of abatement? Is that just a historical thing that we've always given them that abatement? So like, for instance, I'm just saying that Tashi's at 90%, but, you know, for instance, that hotel is not very well, hang on, Hampton Inn. I'm sorry, I'm confusing that with the one in town center.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah, apples
Okay.
to oranges. Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, it's typically the business would make application before a project begins, specifically with like the OEZ.
Yeah, but there are, pursuant to the statutory language that facilitates the OEZ program, the CRA program, there are stipulations as to the percentages, the terms, whether or not school district has to sign off. So there are some statutory limitations on how those can be set up.
Okay.
It is a negotiation, though. I mean, there's some back and forth that goes into that when they're set up.
All right, thank you very much. Before we go to vote, I'm not trying to sway anyone, but I would agree. CIL Isotopes is a great asset in our community, as well as the Hampton Inn that has really helped boost a lot of development in that area of town. So, all right, so seeing no other comments, we'll move for Councilman Scrivens.
Yes, sir. And just for our viewers, you hear all these mnemonics passed around. OEZ means the Ohio Enterprise Zone, and the CRA is the Community Reinvestment Area. So, just so you know that. And this Tax Incentive Review Council, how many members is on that?
So there's only 2 representatives from the city.
Okay.
There are representatives throughout the county that sit on that board. I don't know the total members, but
Countywide?
there's
Okay.
a significant number.
It's
Various
countywide.
county officials that, you know, that are on that board as well.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much. I'll move for a roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace,
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens,
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean,
Aye.
Councilman Branham,
Aye.
Councilman Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Mays,
Aye.
President Smith.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Our next item is also an administrative motion. Item I, this is authorizing the purchase of Prosecutor by Carpal Case Management and e-discovery software for the Law Department. Madam Law Director, would you like to enlighten us on that, please?
Well, I was rather detailed in my summary and my cover memo. So I'll start by saying really what we're trying to do and hoping to accomplish with the purchase of this software is to work smarter, not harder. Right now, the law department handles everything, all police reports, all videos, body cams, everything is done in physical form, paper or CD. That means an officer coming off the street, that means an officer on overtime to bring us that evidence. It means having to physically copy that evidence to get it to defense counsel for discovery purposes, which is mailing costs and copy costs. It's always been a bit of a struggle dealing with the paper. With the COVID pandemic, the court has ordered that all pretrials are now done by phone or over Zoom. There's no in-person pretrials anymore. That used to be when we turned discovery over to defense counsel. So our struggle has grown even more to either have to mail it and get it there in a timely manner, to try and drop it off. My understanding from Judge Lewis is we will be continuing all pretrials by telephone for probably quite a long time. If you will recall under statute, our department is required to provide prosecution services on all misdemeanors that occur within the court's jurisdiction. So we have a caseload of about 11,000 cases a year on average. That's a lot of paper. That's a lot of paper. What this case management software would allow us to do is to go completely digital. Law enforcement would submit their reports, their videos, their photos would all be submitted digitally. All they have to do is drag and drop and upload it and we'll have it. It will allow us to simply send a link to defense counsel to access the discovery. We had been looking at getting some of this software, we really started last year, because it will allow our office to work so much more efficiently than it does now. With the COVID crisis and pre-trials not being in person anymore, it kind of kicked our need for this into high gear. We looked at several different types of software. Of the other jurisdictions in Ohio that I talked to, this prosecutor by Carpel was definitely the most popular. One of the reasons I am recommending this particular software, the initial installation cost is higher than some of the others that we looked at. The annual maintenance costs are not. This company has not raised its annual maintenance fees in 10 years. That's not their business model. Their business model is to grow by adding more customers. I talked to the county prosecutor, someone in the county prosecutor's office in Pickwick County. They use this software. They confirmed there hasn't been an increase in maintenance costs over the 10 years that they've been using it. So the first year maintenance is included in the initial setup fee. The first annual maintenance cost we would see would be in 2022. It's only $5,000 a year. That includes the $1,000 we pay for the external agency portal. That allows all the law enforcement agencies anywhere in the county that we serve to upload the documents they need to us. Part of the reason we're asking for this now, and conversations that I had with the finance director and the assistant city manager, we believe this purchase could be covered by CARES Act funding for this initial installation. It wouldn't cover the continuing maintenance costs, but it's something that because of the pandemic, our need for this has really grown. So that was the long-winded version. The short-winded version is we're trying to work smarter, not harder. This will save us a lot of time. It will definitely make our office more efficient. It's going to be more efficient for law enforcement. It's going to be easier for us to track victim advocate and that we're meeting all Mercy's Law requirements. I think all prosecutors' offices are going to end up going all digital at some point. We're just trying to get ahead of the game.
All right, thank you, Madam Law Director. Do we have a motion to authorize the purchase of this software?
So moved.
So moved by Councilman Scrivens. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Vice President Wallace. Any discussion regarding this purchase? And thank you, Madam Law Director. I know you talked to the mayor and I about this last week, so we appreciate you trying to push forward for efficiency. I know a lot of times the city's under fire for not being efficient. We're certainly trying to improve that. We are doing the best we can with what we have, so thank you very much on that. So at this time, I will go ahead and ask for a roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Smith?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Our next item is administrative motion approving the schedule of bills in tonight's amount of $994,027.06. Mr. Finance Director.
Thank you, Council President. There was a significant expenditure related to construction of Innovation Way on the scheduled bills that accounted for about 2/3 of the bills, and so that's the significant expenditure worth referencing, but I'd be more than happy to answer any other questions that any of you may have on the bills.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions for our Finance Director tonight? Not seeing any questions, so we'll ask for the roll call, please.
Sorry, do we have a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did we not get a motion yet? Okay, who would like to make a motion to?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councilman Dean. And the second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilman Branham. Skipped a step there. You're all looking at me like, what? Okay, I wonder why you weren't calling that roll.
You had me second guess myself for
All
a
right,
second.
no, you're good. Thank you very much. So at this, any comments? Okay, now we're not seeing any. Now it's time for roll call. Thank you for correction.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Smith.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Before we go to appointed officials' reports and council comments, I would like to remind council that starting our next meeting in September, we're going to bring back reports to committees. So if you can, just a quick summary on that for the record. And as we move towards normalcy here and getting things back to normal. So our next item is appointed officials' reports and councilman comments. I want to start first with the law director. Madam Law Director, do you have anything for tonight?
I have nothing else to add, just to say thank you to council for your support. My staff will be over the moon that we're getting that software.
Thank you very much. Anyone have anything for our law director tonight? No?
Just want to say, Mr. President, that as usual, she's well above and beyond expectations. She's an asset to this city, and we thank you for all the work that you do behind the scenes. And even though it's voluminous and we have to read it, I see we're moving forward in a fast way. So I'm sure the courts and everybody else in your department will be happy. I'm over the moon. So we're cutting the paperwork, the burden of that. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
President.
Madam Law Director.
Thank you, Councilman.
All right, our next is Mr. Finance Director.
Thank you, Council President. I will address some of the comments earlier this evening related to the water meter change-out. We did have a discussion with council, I think about a month ago. I don't recall if it was in a regular session or a special session about the irrigation meters. We knew that potentially could be a point of contention. And we evaluated the different options. Ultimately, what we decided to do was to bill any customers who had a meter that was older than 10 years old, an irrigation meter, to bill them for the cost of a replacement meter. While those customers did pay for those meters initially, the cost was much less. So up until about 2011, the cost for that irrigation meter was $40. There was an item to amend the fee schedule in 11 where it went to $250 because that $40 wasn't even coming close to covering even the cost of the meter, let alone the installation of the meter. So any of the customers that are beyond that 10-year-old period paid $40 for their meter, not a significant sum. It is something, and we realize that that $250 for a new meter is significant. At the same time, like any other appliance in your house, whether it's a water heater or water softener, there is a life to that piece of equipment that was purchased, and those meters were at the end of their useful life, and so we made a decision to swap those out. The residents have a choice, obviously, whether or not they would continue to use that irrigation meter if they want to proceed and buy a replacement irrigation meter. If they don't and it was replaced, then we'll come out and we'll swap it out. That was a miscommunication on some of the residents. Not all residents who had an irrigation meter already had theirs swapped out, but there were some where there was a work order issue and they were replaced before those letters went out. But that is an option for the resident. Most residents that we took a look at did benefit from having the irrigation meter and not paying for the sewer portion of their bill when they were doing things like watering their grass. For others, it wasn't beneficial. They weren't really using those meters to any great extent. So that's where we landed. We are allowing payment plans to try to spread that cost across many months for those residents who would prefer to go that route. We realize it is frustrating for some residents who have to purchase those again, and yet in looking at the options, that seemed like the best of options. I know there was some comments about the city making money on water meters or on water in general, and the city doesn't make money on the water system. The water system's self-sustaining, so we don't take those dollars and we don't use it for any other purpose to pave roads or to provide for any other city type of expenditure. It's self-contained within that water fund, and so really what happens is those water fees they support the system, and so sure the city could have could have replaced those meters at no cost. But then ultimately what happens is the entire city as a whole would pay for that eventually through the rate structure. And so at least in my opinion, it makes more sense to put that cost back on the person who has the irrigation meter. We don't install irrigation meters throughout the city for everyone, so they're gaining a benefit from that particular meter. And so I think that it's fair that they would pay for that benefit. But I certainly understand the frustration with having purchased that meter 10 plus years ago, and then now having that cost and not having a choice on whether or not your meter was swapped out. I totally get the frustration. That's why we brought it to council, because we knew that there were going to be some frustrations with that direction. And so I get it, I understand, and yet that's what I felt like was the most fair direction, and that's what council seemed to coalesce around as far as the ultimate solution to that particular problem. I'd also just say, just generally about the meter change out, I sent out an email earlier in the week. We have had some issues with pulling those readings off of those meters. I think we've got it resolved now, but a lot of those customers who did receive fairly large bills 2 cycles ago, in this most recent cycle, got a minimum bill, so a much smaller bill, because we had to estimate the usage without having actual readings. And so there's going to be some fluctuation, unfortunately. They probably had a high bill, now they're going to have a lower bill. Ultimately, in the next billing cycle, they're probably going to have another bill that's slightly higher, depending on their usage and the timing of when that meter was swapped out. And that's unfortunate. I wish that we could have avoided some of that. But in the end, and some of the adjustments that we're making and trying to make sure that everybody's credited for that 200 minimum that they used, regardless of when the timing of their meter was swapped out, we're confident that nobody's going to be negatively impacted overall throughout the period of time and pay more for water than what they actually used. So it is frustrating. It's not ideal that the bills would fluctuate in that way. I wish that there was a way that we could have made it more consistent throughout the process. Unfortunately, that's not how it's played out, and we're doing our best to try to to make as good with the situation as what we can, to try to make sure customers aren't negatively impacted on the whole of consumption and the amount that they're billed. So that's kind of a quick update. They are making great progress. They're pretty much through all of the outside meters. They've got a few left, but I think before the end of the month they will have swapped out all of those outside meters, and they'll start working on some of the inside meters in the businesses. So there is some good progress being made, and we'll keep working through issues as they arise. It is a significant project. There are a few projects that the city undertakes where we're touching basically every single resident in the city, and so we expected that there would be some issues. We've run into some that we'd hoped to avoid, but we're doing our best to try to resolve those things as they come. So we certainly would be happy to answer any other questions that you have about that. Again, also when it comes to the transition to RETA, on a separate topic, income tax collection, we were able to get the offices repositioned this week. So APG came in, they installed all the furniture that had been purchased by RETA. We've moved all of the utility equipment and furniture to a different side of the office, and so we're really through a lot of that. The IT issues, we've resolved a lot of those things. So there were a lot of new lines that needed to be run connecting RETA in our server room. So our IT department's been hard at work. Our public service department did a good job facilitating a lot of those things as well. And so we're really ready to roll with that and fulfill our obligations under that lease agreement that we have with RETA, and they will begin collections at the first of the month. So we're very close now to the end of our time as the collector of those taxes, and RETA will take over those responsibilities here in a few days. So wanted to give an update on that as well. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. I do have a question. Can you elaborate if or when we've had any water rate increases?
Yeah, so the last couple of years we have not. I'd have to look. I can pull it up for you here pretty quickly. I believe that 2018 was the last. I know we didn't have one in 19. and we haven't requested one and don't intend on bringing a request for rate increase in '20. But I think it was 2018 was the last increase. I think it was approved several years prior, but I think it actually went into effect in 2018. But I'll look that up real
All right,
quick
thank
for you
you.
and have an
So,
answer.
my question is, if a resident does not want that irrigation meter, what are their options that can be pulled? They can not pay for it, they can break that up into payments, or they can just connect their water through their main meter that's provided free of charge by the city, and they
Yeah.
don't buy the second one that
Yeah.
they choose to
So-
have?
So if they want to keep their meter, they could either make monthly installments, payments, or they could pay for it all up front if they'd prefer to do that.
Okay.
If they don't want the meter, then we would go and pull the meter. If it's been changed out, there's some that haven't been changed out, and then we'd pull the old meter. And ultimately, then all of that water would run through their main meter, and they would pay sewer on all of that usage. So they certainly have that choice to pull the meter. We'd then switch everything over to where it would all run through their primary meter. Yeah, so that's the options.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have any questions for our finance director tonight?
I got one more question when it pertains to the water meters. How are we notifying these residents that have the meters indoors? What's our game plan for that?
Yes,
Can't
sir.
hear you, Councilman Brennan.
I said, what is our game plan for notifying residents that have indoor water meters?
They'll knock on doors, they'll put on door hangers, they'll do their best to contact the resident and set up an appointment. There's some residents who we have information from where we may be able to contact them via email or cell phone, but it's a pretty small percentage really that we have that kind of contact info for. So most of it's going to be some sort of interaction at the residence where they're knocking on the door, putting a door hanger on, asking them to give them a call. And so there will be a process to set up an appointment that works for the resident for them to come in and swap it out.
It's worth mentioning also, we've had conversations and don't have concrete plans yet, but we have an old water system. Councilman Brennan, as you know, we have a lot of unique situations with our meters. In some cases, we have residences that have one valve and 2 meters. So some of these indoor meters that really are not something that we would prefer to have in this day and age, as well as some of these other unique situations. It's time to tackle these issues and make them right and bring them up to code today. So we can't tackle all these things over the short run, but we've talked about being much more intentional in terms of correcting some of these things for the long term. Some of these indoor meters, for example, in businesses, not a problem. To have an indoor meter in a residence, it is a problem. There was a time when we kept an inventory of private residential keys to be able to enter people's houses and check their meters. So we've come a long way since then, thank God. But there are some of these indoor meter or some of these other plumbing issues that are carryover issues, and we're trying to bring those things up to speed in the next couple of years.
Could I tack on to that with where at least, I don't know if this is where you're headed, but I know there was confusion. I know we tried to get the word out about the meters being changed, but especially with in-home, if we could put out in any way, whether it's on our social media or our website, what the process is as far as what to expect. Because when I have somebody knock on my door, I don't believe them half the time. I don't think that you're actually with DPNL. I think that you're somebody, because we've all had those experiences of, just bring me your bill. Okay, just that whole shadiness. So making sure that we spell out for our residents, yes, that we have actually asked them to come to you. Yes, this is okay. This is the ID to look for, and this is the process.
Yeah, our water meter change-up folks are not also selling magazines, so we definitely want to make sure that.
We just want to make sure that we
Yeah.
have that all
And we
spelled
can,
out of what exactly to expect, so that I know who's knocking on my door is legit.
And certainly they should be presenting credentials and things like that to give people some confidence. I think that's a very good point, and I think we can address some of that.
there's some of those things that are required of the contractors, but we can certainly work with public
Thank you.
relations to try to get that message out.
Not some
I'd
mistakes.
also
Careful today.
just note, January 1st of 2018 was the last rate increase. So we haven't had one since then.
Thank you. Anything else for our finance director tonight? Thank you very much. All right, our next person up is our city manager.
Thank you, sir. I got a couple updates this evening. First, we had a lightning strike at the Justice Center about 5 weeks ago. And we have been, over the past few weeks, systematically going through with the police division and court and whatnot, identifying items, usually technology-related items that would have been damaged. And we've actually accumulated quite a list, but one of the problems that we've encountered is that lightning strike completely disabled the elevator in the Justice Center. And we have been working with our maintenance contractor, again, trying to systematically troubleshoot to get that elevator back up and running. And it has been a monstrous chore, and we've been unsuccessful to this point. So we have basically put the contractor on notice that enough's enough. And so they brought in the engineering firm, Otis Elevators, the engineering firm that designed and fabricated that. We believe we have a solution, but I wanted to point out that we do have some limitations in terms of public access at the site. I want to thank the court and Judge Lewis. They've been very accommodating through what has been a difficult period in trying to get this thing back up and running. So appreciate their patience. We have a solution, we think, as I suggested, that we can employ next week. If for some reason that doesn't work, we've listed some additional options for the court in terms of accessibility. They do have at least one jury trial coming up, and so it makes accessibility with the elevator that much more important. So wanted to make you aware that we're troubleshooting, working to try to work through that, and then we'll work with the court on alternative options if we need to do that. It's worth noting, I don't have the total right now, but we're approaching probably $100,000 in damage citywide from that storm. You'll remember the storm event that came through in mid-July. And again, the tally's still collecting there from the Justice Center. So most of the damage was to equipment related to our 911 dispatch and technology systems. Never any interruption in service there, but those are things that tend to show up incrementally over time from that power surge. And this is nothing new. We experience a lightning strike there with our tower probably once every few years, which is why you have insurance. So, second, I wanted to let council know, earlier this week, the Ohio Controlling Board voted to authorize release of additional funds from the CARES Act. If you recall, this is the federal legislation that provided some stimulus and financial support nationwide. The state of Ohio was granted about $1.3 million initially. Of that, they released, I think it's $350 million to be distributed throughout the state to all the local jurisdictions. If you recall, at that time, the city had about $950,000 that ostensibly is available to us to use to offset expenditures related to the COVID-19 situation. So the state this week released another $175 million and instructed that that be disseminated in the same manner as the prior. So we would expect to see some additional funding for that. The problem with that money at this point is it's very limited in its use. It has to be COVID related. It can't fill budget gaps. So as we discussed with you previously, we have been trying to collect all the different additional expenditures that we've had and make sure that we're compliant by Treasury standards in terms of how those dollars can be used. But we want you to know that there's probably additional money that's in the queue for the city, as well as our sister agencies. So. Also, Colorado Drive Rehab is our large roadway project this year. The concrete work has already started out there. We expect early October for the resurfacing is when we're in the queue. And our crack sealing for the year will start on Monday, so folks should expect to see some crews out for that. Wanted to mention that we are still working to determine what to do with our fall and winter holiday events. Again, we will have to work with the health department to make a determination about what can be done. In the case of trick-or-treating, we do try to work in conjunction with all the other communities, or the majority of them in the Miami Valley. So we haven't made a final determination. I think where this council has said you want to err is let's try to do this wherever safe and possible. Let's try to do as much as we can. And so that's what we'll continue to do. We will have staff that will talk with BRCA next week specifically about Christmas and determine what we can do there. I think we've got some creative ideas that are rolling on that, so we'll let you know as soon as we come up with some concrete plans. And then finally, just to follow up on one other of the public comment items this evening, we've already made contact with our patrol captain and the police division. They'll be reaching out, looking at speed on Lexington Avenue. So we've already made that contact. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you very much. All right, next up is mayor and city council comments. I'm going to start to the left of myself, and I'm going to start with Councilwoman Rebecca Dean. Do you have anything for tonight?
I don't have anything to add tonight.
All right, thank you. All right, next up is Councilman Scrivens. You're welcome.
First thing, I was going to bring up the reports of boards and commissions, so we'll see those back on the agenda: traffic, planning and zoning, BZA, BRCA, MVRPC, city charter, budget, EDAB, loan trust. We just need an update. The people want to know what their government is doing. So I'm glad to see that back on the agenda. I had to fill one question from a disgruntled citizen. They said, quote, "How many streets have been paved this year?" unquote. Well, now we know. So it'll be Colorado Drive. Just for everybody's edification, the engineering department produced what was called a PCI, a Pavement Condition Index. And they went through every street in Xenia, apparently, and they rated them according to whatever formula or metric they were using. And they gave it a color code of red, yellow, and green. Well, the fact of the matter is, most of the streets in Xenia, as you well know, are red. Very few are yellow, and even fewer than that are green. So we're up against a wall here, and that's just the way it is. So if your street reminds you of a washboard, an old-fashioned washboard, you're not alone, believe me. Second thing, I did have a chance to get with the city manager over the last period between meetings, and we kind of did a little assessment of how the streets get bad. Well, they get bad from the curb out. That means if we don't take care of our own curbs and have grass growing out of the curbs and over the curbs, eventually it cracks out the seal between the curb and the street, and now we got grass growing in there. And if you study biology like I did, you have something called root pressure and turgor pressure, and it's strong enough to crack asphalt and cement. And therefore, if we don't cut the weeds out of our own curbs and in front of our own house, eventually it'll crack out toward the street, and eventually it'll start the street to deteriorating. So our job is to adopt our own curbs and keep them grass and weed free. I know that's a task, and we're Xenians, we don't want to do nothing we don't have to do. But if we want to save our streets, we need to start in front of our own house and do our own block. You walk up and down your sidewalk, you see weeds coming out your sidewalk. It's not well maintained. So let's just face the facts. Either we're going to maintain what we got. That's what the school board had to learn. They had to maintain what they have before the cities go authorize them to do anything else. So that's just my point of contention. So that's the curbs, the gutters, the catch basins. If you got a catch basin at your corner and you see it's got leaves and somebody throw a cup in there or something, clean it out. You're just helping yourself. Neighborhood speeding. We've fielded complaints from Tennessee, Stelton Road, Lexington, and North Columbus Avenue. With the advent of the circle, people power out of that circle. I can hear them from my house. Whoa! It sounds like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And they'll fly right on out 42, 1-0, like it's a fire. And Mr. Rasnick was here, and I was sitting on my driveway, and I heard this guy come flying down the street, and everyone said, "Hey, slow down." And I heard the guy got out and sold him a wolf ticket. I wish he'd have sold me one. I just wish he would have sold me one, because we'd have had the EMS up there and the coroner, and it would have been my story that was been told. I don't know why people all of a sudden have this need for speed. It's ridiculous. And it's not, it's all over town. So I don't know what we can do, but one thing for sure, if I see you and I get your license plate, I'm going to put the nab on you. I'm going to turn you in. It's just ridiculous. Speed limit in the neighborhood is 25 miles an hour, not 45 and 50. I'm on my soapbox. And while I'm on North Columbus Avenue, a number of people walk up and down that avenue, or North Columbus Street, however it's called, and there are no shoulders, there are no aprons to the properties from the circle all the way out to the city limits. There are no aprons like on South Columbus or South Cincinnati Avenue. They have aprons, they have some place to walk. Well, we don't. And one person, Mr. Quarles, he's an avid walker, and he lives on the west side of North Columbus Avenue. So he goes down to the circle. Then when he makes a right to go down Church Street, there's no sidewalk there. So now he's either confronted to walk in the circle or walk in somebody's yard where there's no sidewalk been appropriated. We need a sidewalk to complete that circle there. You can walk around the other side and go down, but this side here has no sidewalk. So I even walked it myself, and I found myself either I have to get into traffic or I have to step over on some property that I don't know who it belongs to. So that's just something that maybe the engineer and we can take a look at. And understand that there's a study of intersections going on by the county engineer. Well, there are a number of intersections in Xenia that need to be studied, and I've submitted a couple to the city manager and hopefully the MVRPC will put it on their bucket list. And with that, Mr. President, just wanted to give heartfelt condolences to the family of Mary Ann Faulkner. Her husband, Gabby, was a longtime mailman here in Xenia. They recently had moved to Fairborn, and she had lost her fight against diabetes after a few amputations. I think she was only 53, maybe 57, but I think 53, so we extend our condolences to that family. And with that, Mr. President, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Councilman Scrivens. Thank you for those observations regarding the traffic circle. Next up is Councilman Branham.
Wow, I got a lot of bullets here. Hopefully I won't take too long. So first off, I want to thank the Ohio Task Force, and I know that Xenia PD and I believe Xenia Fire Department had some employees that dispatched that for storm response down with the hurricane. So I want to thank them for their service for that. I'd also like to thank, it was an awkward time when I showed up to the park yesterday, and there was an incident that went on at Shawnee Park that I don't think Xenia Fire Department or Xenia PD wanted to be a part of, or the Sheriff's Department, or the park rangers that was all there. So I also want to appreciate them for their service in that matter, and I want to say if you need to cool off, go to the splash pad, but make sure you wear clothes. Back to the basics when it comes to speeding. Obviously, this is a big-time city issue. I look at different areas, and I ask myself, hey, what cities do we not speed in? You know, you think of Yellow Springs, you think of Waynesville, you think of Oakwood. You automatically know in your brain, hey, you don't speed in those towns because, they're going to get you. I think that Xenia needs to get back to the basics, start pulling some people over, giving some speeding tickets out. Yes, I don't like paying fees. I don't like paying additional taxes. But at the end of the day, when it becomes a health concern, especially based upon health of our kids, little Johnny runs out and grabs his ball. He gets hit by one of these cars that's going 45 in a 25 mile an hour zone. That's brutal. Just in the past 2 council meetings, Lexington, I know Mayor Mays had brought up her street. Colorado's bad. Honestly, and the worst thing is I think it's only going to get worse as it gets paved, which I'm blessed that it's going to get paved, but they're going to go that much faster. Let's see here. What else? I think that the water meter issue is definitely a compounding frustration. I think between people getting higher water bills, plus potentially with the tag of the water meter, yes, it can get aggravating. I know that personally my bill doubled 1 month, the following month I got a minimum bill. Still, in my mind, I sit there and I think, well, is that minimum bill really just minimal because of where that laid? And it is. I don't know whether, for instance, I think on specifically the water bill side, if there's some way that we could potentially waive, not necessarily disconnects, because we've got our people that's, gets disconnected on a regular basis, but if there's a way that we could potentially waive the additional fee if people are late, because I know we got individuals in our town that are in fixed incomes that say, hey, my normal water bill's $50 a month. You know, they don't want to pay $100 one month. Yes, it evens out, but if they're on that fixed income, it really makes a difference. For the water meters, because I like to address everybody typically that comments, I, for one, completely agree when it comes to, you know, any of your normal maintenance, your hot water heater, you go out and buy a new car, you gotta buy tags for it. Every year, guess what? You gotta buy the updated tag every single year. It's part of life. Yes, it stinks. Yes, you're outside of that 10-year window. But really, at the end of the day, you know, you pay a monthly internet bill. Typically, you got a router fee that's involved in that. If your router craps out, you still got to get, you know, you still pay for that router. So, yes, it's a circumstance that does have frustrations, and I do feel for you because I don't have a water meter, an additional water meter, but I do have experienced the higher water bills. That's it. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Councilman Branham. Councilman Dean?
I don't have anything to add tonight, thank you.
Nothing for tonight. All right, thank you. Vice President Wallace. Are you prepared? Can you hear us, Vice President Wallace?
You're on mute.
I had my phone muted.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
Mike, actually, I have nothing tonight. The only thing I would say in comment is that to former Councilman Cap's issue with the irrigation meter is that if she didn't have that meter, even though I can imagine that I'd be very upset with a $250 plus bill, but without that meter, he'd have that additional expense all year long. So it's regrettable, but it's necessary that we did change those meters out so that the whole system is upgraded.
Thank you. Anything else tonight?
No, thank you.
All right.
No, sir.
All right, thank you, Vice President Wallace. Mayor Mays.
Thank you, sir. The points that have been made about the water meter and the irrigation meter have already been made, so thank you. I think the example about the car tags was a really great example.
I
Thank
can't
you.
hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Finance Director, for addressing that. We did address that as a council as a whole a month ago, and I stand by that decision, so thank you, sir. I wanted to congratulate Green Memorial. I spoke with Jared Carasoma yesterday, and they had their triannual accreditation survey. It went very well for them, and a lot of good remarks, and so very pleased with how things were going there. Also had a chance to reach out to our superintendents and spoke to one specifically. It's been at the Career Center a good start. Students are very excited about how it's going, and things are going well. So I know it's been a long road, and there's still some things to work out, but very thankful for a good start there and wanted to congratulate them. I'll leave it there tonight. So, and as far as the speed, I know that Mr. Raskin has left. Is that his name? Rasnick, excuse me. Again, that's already been addressed tonight. It's exactly what you said. This is a community-wide issue, and I hope that we continue as citizens to address this with each other. And I know that we have work to do. I noticed on King Street there was some frustration about where the speed sign had been placed. That got moved. The police are responding to requests and are doing their best to address some of these concerns. So I want to thank them for their work. I know it's been very difficult, but I want to thank them. So that's all I have, sir.
Thank you very much. Moving forward tonight, I'd like to thank everyone that is watching tonight and those that are in the audience. Had a pretty full agenda tonight, so I will comment a few things on what has already been said tonight, just from a little bit different perspective. But and Councilman Kaup, thank you for attending tonight. We haven't seen you in quite a while, so thanks for your comments tonight. You probably don't always agree with what we have to do, but your comments are certainly noted. They are welcome. And while we're not a bunch of bad guys up here, we're also big boys, so we know that some of the decisions that we make aren't popular, but that's what we're elected to do. And so we have to make those decisions. Some confusion tonight, though, in your comments were that we You kind of made it sound like we chose to leave the county for the water contract. That was their decision, not ours. Sure, it did impact our rates slightly. But again, that was the council given notice by the county that they weren't going to continue with that contract. So we really didn't have a choice in that matter. Also, the confusion is making money off water. It kind of sets a message to the voters that we're stockpiling enterprise funds and we're unwilling to spend those on streets. By law, and you know that by being on council for 8 years, we can't funnel that water money to our streets, our police, or our fire department, which makes up 90% of our budget. So I just want the public to kind of understand that. We did talk about the water meters probably in length for over an hour about 3 meetings ago. And then we just also discussed probably 20 or 30 minutes of that discussion was on the charges of what the meter was going to cost the residents. Because that water is a service, that first meter is no charge. That second meter, that's your choice if you want that. So if you don't want it, we won't give it to you. But if you do want it, if it's over 10 years old, unfortunately, there's a cost for that. And again, as the finance director said, that payment can be broken up if that creates some kind of hardship. So the city would be willing to work with someone on that. But, you know, water is a service, just like trash collection's a service. It's not really a tax. If I owned a restaurant and I had to buy a piece of equipment like a coffee maker, that's not a tax, that's a piece of equipment. So, and that's, you're more than in your right to consider that a tax because that's something that you feel has been imposed to you without your choice. But again, that the council voted unanimously, I think, for that. So I guess we're all sitting up here again. We had to make that decision, as unpopular as it is. But as the mayor said, we just have to stand by that decision. So, but again, anyone that's watching tonight, we appreciate our community. We have a very gracious community. We have a very gracious council up here that's more than willing at any time to field your comments or your emails. Feel free to reach out to us. Our meetings are now open to the public within limits of how many people we can have in here. You're certainly welcome to come. And I would certainly reach out to our different department heads. If you have an issue with public service, then reach out to them. If you have an issue with the water collection, your water bill, then reach out to the appropriate department. If you have an issue with police enforcement, then reach out to the police chief. And then you can always reach out to our city manager, who's always available to listen to your comments. So with that being said, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. I have a motion by Councilwoman Dean. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilman Branham. Any other discussion for tonight? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Smith?
Aye. Thank you
Motion
very
carried.
much.